How do you solve questions faster on your standardized test? That's the question I want to tackle in this video. Hi, I'm Ethridge, founder of Dominate Test Prep, and time management is one of the things I get asked about most from my students, and specifically how to answer questions faster because you are taking a timed test. If you had unlimited time, as you often have in your practice sessions, you can get a lot of right answers. No time pressure at all. You can take 5 minutes, 10 minutes on a question, go back and watch some videos, look things up, talk to your tutor, and get right answers. But what happens on test day when that clock is ticking down and you only have 2 minutes per question, for example, or perhaps even less? You still need to get a right answer, but you need to do so faster. I want to share an analogy with you that I think will be incredibly helpful. Now, let me give you this caveat. When I tell you the tip, when I tell you the solution to solving questions faster, you might think to yourself, well, of course. If I knew how to do that, I would just do it. That's why I'm watching this video. But I think when I explain it in a little bit more detail, it'll make sense to you. I, as a lot of you know, am an athlete, a CrossFit athlete specifically, and I remember a few years ago I was training for a particular competition, and I was lamenting how slow of a runner I am relative to my competitors, right? And it was something I was working on. I was running a lot more, trying to get faster at running, and I just wasn't making a lot of progress. And I went to my coach and I asked him, how do I get faster at running? And here was his answer, and it's my answer to you as well. He said, the way to get faster at running is that when you are practicing, when you are training, run faster. I was like, of course, that's what I'm asking you. How do I do that? But let me explain, and here's what he explained, and it made a ton of sense to me. When I go out to run, I have a default running pace that's pretty much the same all the time. I go for a run and I run at that pace, and we'll call it a 9-minute mile pace, for example. So I go for a run, whether I'm running a mile or 3 miles or 5 miles, I just kind of go run at that pace, 9 minutes a mile. And I might get a little faster as my leg strength increases or my fitness level increases, but not much. Incrementally, because it's a mindset. Because when I go for a run, I settle into my running pace. And his point was, you have to force yourself to run faster, even if it's uncomfortable in the beginning, to sort of lower your time threshold that you are now comfortable with. So sometimes go out and run at a 8.5-minute mile pace. And that's a pretty big difference between 9 and 8.5. Sometimes maybe go out and run sprints at a 7-minute mile pace. I think you get the idea. And when I started to implement that, not every single time I went out for a run, but I would intentionally run faster. In the beginning, I couldn't sustain that pace for as long. But little by little, because I intentionally made myself run at a different pace than my default, than my comfort, that became my new norm. And again, it was that mindset. And so for you, as you're preparing for your standardized test, how do you solve questions faster? Solve them faster. In other words, mentally commit to speeding up your brain to, I am going to work on this block of questions faster than my default pace, because you have a default pace as well. And where I see it most often is on reading comprehension, but it applies on the math section as well, all aspects of the exam. But think about reading. You have a default reading pace. So do I. I've read my entire life, but guess what? No matter how much I read, and I read a lot, my reading pace is pretty much the same. Like if I sit down, whether I sit down to read standardized test reading comprehension passages or a novel at the beach, when I'm just sort of relaxing, I just sort of read at the same pace. How are you going to get faster at reading, for example? You have to force yourself to read faster. And there are great ways to do that. If you've ever taken a speed reading class, for example, you may have seen this trick, and you can apply it right now. When you're reading, whether you have the hard copy textbook that you're working off of for your passages, or you're on a computer screen, use your pointer finger and trace the words. Literally underline the words as you are reading. And you will naturally read faster because you're just sort of following your finger at a certain pace. It absolutely works. In fact, just that tip alone can increase your reading speed by about 50%. That is significant on test day. And you might say, yeah, but I don't understand what I'm reading when I read that fast. That might be true in the beginning, but if you practice it, you will. Absolutely. And what you'll realize is you don't need to read every single word to get the main understanding, which is all you need for reading comprehension passages. So that's what I'm talking about. When you sit down to practice, don't just slip into your nice, comfortable pace. This is my running pace. I'm comfortable here. This is my reading pace. This is how quickly I solve math problems. Force yourself to go faster. Trace the words with a finger for reading comprehension. On math, force yourself I am going to solve this question in a minute and a half instead of 2 minutes. And here's the other thing that happens, right? It's a mindset. Practicing it will help. Do it with blocks of problems, not necessarily individual questions. So let's say your pace, your desired pace on test day is going to be about on average 2 minutes per question. Do a block of 5 questions and set a timer for 10 minutes. A timer is how you are going to speed yourself up. Because if you're used to solving questions in 2.5, 3, 4 minutes, and now we want to average out to 2 minutes, you force yourself to adopt that mindset, you work faster. And even if you haven't yet arrived at a right answer by the time you're getting to about 2 minutes, it's good practice to force yourself to actually select an answer. Hey, I need to cut my losses because on test day, I'm going to have to move to the next question. Can I throw out some obvious wrong answers here? Can I improve my guessing odds? Can I mark it, skip it to come back to it? Decisions have to be made at the end of those 2-ish minutes, on average, over the 5 questions within 10 minutes. And that's a great way to practice as well. You can also apply different strategies and techniques. We certainly teach them in our courses. Head over to dominatetestprep.com. On the math side, one of the simple tips that I teach my students is when you're doing percents, for example, rather than doing the long multiplication. And by the way, if you find yourself doing long multiplication on your scratch paper without a calculator, you've probably missed something. And a great strategy there is approximate. Rather than doing the minute, absolute correct calculations, can you round the numbers? Can you approximate? And for percents, for example, a simple tip is tip your waitress. We can all find 10% of something. So let's say the question is, what is 30% of 50, for example? Oh, 30% of 50, I don't have a calculator. Okay, 50 times 0.3, preserve the decimal point. No, what's 10% of 50? Let's say you go to a restaurant and the bill is $50. What's 10% of that? What are you going to tip on? Oh, why tip 20%? Okay, well 10% of that's just $5. Just move the decimal point, right? 10% we can find easily. So 20%, double that, $5, $10. 15%, double that, $15. Oh, okay, 30% of 50 is $15. So there are definitely tips and tricks for speeding up on different types of questions. But in this video, I just wanted to introduce you to this mindset of, in your practice sessions, commit to working problems faster, speed your brain up, ratchet up your comfort level at a faster pace. And in fact, one final analogy for you, again, as an athlete, if you've ever seen baseball players warm up in the batter's box before it's their turn to hit, right? They put a weight on their bat so that they practice with the heavier bat, so when they get up to bat for real, the bat feels super light. You can do that as well. If your average time per question on your exam is 2 minutes per question, what if you actually set your stopwatch and try to start solving questions in a minute and a half? Ooh, Brett, that's going to feel very uncomfortable. That's like too fast. Yeah, but imagine how much 2 minutes is going to feel like on test day. Like, I've got all the time in the world because I'm used to practicing at a minute and a half per question. See what I mean? And the final thing I would say is, as your proficiency increases, naturally, you're going to get faster at things. If it takes you a long time to solve certain word problems, for example, because you're not very good at distance rate time questions or work rate problems or any number of other word problems, and that's why it's taking you a long time, of course, as you get better at that stuff, you're going to get faster at it. Once you learn how to solve work rate questions with the ideal formula, you can solve it in a minute. So there is some learning that has to happen. As your skills improve, you're going to get faster naturally as well. And that's where prep comes in. So again, head over to dominatetestprep.com. We've got you covered. We'll teach you all the content. We'll get you proficient. We'll help you speed up simply because you're better at the stuff. But even then, when you are practicing, my tip here is speed up your brain intentionally several practice sessions a week. You will get better at it. It'll feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but just like me with my running, it did get faster, guys. Absolutely, without question. As I started to push my pace, I got faster at running, and I believe the same will happen for you as you are preparing for your standardized test. So to solve questions faster, just solve them faster. Sounds simple, but it works. You heard it here first. So, Brett Ethridge with Dominate Test Prep signing off for now. Comments, questions, leave them below. I'm here to serve you and help you and prepare you to dominate your test.